Deep in the quiet halls of Kepler Station, Jinwoo worked alone in the Great Archive. The tall alien had blue skin and 4 arms, but his mind worked like any good librarian. He loved finding old stories and keeping records safe. Tonight felt different, though. Something was calling to him from the deepest parts of the computer system. The archive held the history of every planet and every people in the galaxy. Thousands of worlds, millions of stories, all kept in one place. Jinwoo had worked here for 30 years and he thought he knew every corner of the vast digital library. But tonight strange files were appearing on his screen. "What are these?" he whispered to himself, his 4 hands dancing across the glowing controls. The files looked broken, like someone had tried to erase them long ago, but they were not completely gone. Pieces remained, floating in the computer like ghosts. Jinwoo was good at fixing broken data, so he started to work. As he cleaned up the files, words began to appear. Strange words in an old language. Human. Terra. Earth. Jinwoo had never heard these words before, but they felt important somehow. The files were very old. Older than anything else in the archive. Older than the oldest civilization Jinwoo knew about. That should have been impossible. The Galactic Council kept perfect records going back 50,000 years. Nothing should be older than that. Maybe the computer made a mistake, Jinwoo thought. But he kept working anyway. Hours passed. Jinwoo forgot about food and sleep. The more he fixed, the more interesting the files became. They talked about a world called Earth and people called humans. These humans had done amazing things. They built giant ships that could travel between stars. They survived wars and disasters. They never gave up even when everything looked hopeless. But here was the strange part. Nobody in the galaxy had ever heard of humans or Earth. How could a whole civilization just disappear from history? Jinwoo found coordinates hidden in the HFY files. Numbers that pointed to a place in space far from any known world. The files called it the Terra system. According to the computer, that area of space was empty. Dead. Nothing lived there. The office door opened with a soft sound. Hyejin walked in carrying 2 cups of hot tea. She was young and curious, with skin that glowed soft blue in the dark. She worked as Jinwoo's helper and had become like a daughter to him. "Still working?" she asked, setting a cup near his computer. "It is very late." Jinwoo showed her the screen. "Look at this. Have you ever heard of humans?" Hyejin studied the strange words floating in the air above the computer. She shook her head. "No. Should I have?" "These files say humans were real. They had a whole civilization, ships, cities, art, music. But nobody remembers them. It is like they never existed." Hyejin sat down next to Jinwoo. "Maybe they are just stories, made-up tales from long ago." But Jinwoo did not think so. The files felt too real, too detailed. They had star maps and technical plans. They had pictures of strange creatures that looked almost like some people. Jinwoo knew, but different. These humans stood on 2 legs and had smooth skin and hair on their heads. Their eyes were small but bright with intelligence. "Look at this," Jinwoo said, pointing to a section he had just unlocked. "It talks about something called Project Exodus. The humans were leaving their homeworld, all of them, the whole species." "Why would they leave?" Hyejin asked. Jinwoo read more of the file. Their star was dying, getting too hot too fast. They had to run or die. The files showed pictures of massive ships, each one big enough to hold a city. Hundreds of these ships, maybe thousands, all carrying humans away from their dying world to find new homes among the stars. "If this is true," Hyejin said slowly, "where did they go? There should be human worlds all over the galaxy." That was the big question. If humans had spread across the stars 12,000 years ago, why was there no sign of them now? Jinwoo searched the files for more answers, but many sections were too damaged to read. Then he found something that made his blood run cold. In the deepest part of the files, hidden behind layers of security, was a single word repeated over and over. Plague. Something happened to them, Jinwoo whispered. Something bad. Hyejin leaned closer to read the screen. What kind of plague? But before Jinwoo could answer, alarms started ringing throughout the archive. Red lights flashed on the walls. Someone was coming, someone important, and probably angry. Jinwoo quickly saved all the files to a hidden drive and shut down his computer. We cannot let anyone know about this yet, he told Hyejin. Something tells me the council does not want these files to be found. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Jinwoo and Hyejin sat quietly, pretending to drink their tea and raid normal files. But Jinwoo's mind was racing. Somewhere out there in the dark between the stars, the truth about humanity was waiting. And he was going to find it no matter what the council said. The door burst open and everything changed. The heavy door slammed open and 3 council guards marched into the archive. Behind them walked Officer Taemin, a tall creature with silver skin and cold metal eyes. Jinwoo had seen him before. Taemin only came when there was serious trouble. Working late again, archivist? Taemin's voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. His eyes scanned the room looking for anything wrong. Just fixing some old files, Jinwoo said, trying to keep his voice calm. Nothing important. Taemin walked slowly around the room, his metal fingers tapping on tables and walls. The computer systems show unusual activity in this section. Deep archive access, restricted files. Jinwoo felt his heart beating fast. Sometimes old files get corrupted. I was just cleaning them up. Show me, Taemin ordered. Jinwoo turned on his computer and showed Taemin some normal files about trade routes and weather patterns. Nothing about humans or Earth. The hidden drive with the real files stayed hidden. After what felt like hours, Taemin finally left with his guards. But Jinwoo knew they would be watching now. He and Hyejin would have to be very careful. For the next 3 weeks, Jinwoo and Hyejin worked in secret. They came to the archive early and stayed late. They used different computers each day and never accessed the human files when other people were around. Slowly, piece by piece, they put together the story of Earth's lost children. The humans had been amazing. They built things that should have been impossible with their simple technology, while other species waited thousands of years to develop. Perfect machines, humans just started with what they had and made it better as they went. Look at this, Hyejin whispered one evening, pointing at her screen. They went to space using controlled explosions, just fire and metal tubes. It should not have worked. But it did work. The files showed humans landing on their moon, building space stations, and eventually creating ships that could travel faster than light. They did not wait for someone to teach them. They figured it out themselves. Jinwoo found records of human art and music. Their songs were beautiful and sad, full of hope and pain. They wrote stories about heroes and adventures, about love and loss. They painted pictures of their blue and green world with white clouds and silver moons. They were like us, Hyejin said softly. They had families and dreams. They laughed and cried and hoped for better days. The most amazing discovery was how humans dealt with problems. When their planet got too crowded, they built cities in the sky. When they ran out of energy, they learned to capture power from their star. When wars broke out, they somehow found ways to make peace. But the files also showed human mistakes. They had wars that killed millions. They poisoned their air and water. They sometimes fought each other instead of working together. But even when things looked hopeless, they never gave up trying to do better. Jinwoo found technical plans that made no sense. Humans had built fusion reactors the size of buildings to power their giant ships. They created artificial gravity, using spinning sections. They grew food in space using lights and chemicals. Everything was so simple but so clever. How did they think of these things? Hyejin asked, studying a plan for a generation ship. They had to, Jinwoo replied. When your son is dying and you have nowhere to run, you either find a way or you die. Humans always found a way. The files showed that Project Exodus was huge, not just one ship or 10 ships, but hundreds of massive vessels. Each ship carried between 1 and 5 million humans in special sleeping chambers. Men, women, children, old people, everyone. the entire human species, scattered across the galaxy like seeds in the wind. Jin Woo traced their paths on star maps. The ships went in every direction. Some headed toward the galactic center where stars were thick and planets were common. Others went to the outer edges where space was dark and empty but safe. A few even tried to reach other galaxies far away. If they succeeded, Heejin said, there should be human colonies everywhere. Billions of humans on thousands of worlds. But there were not. The galaxy was full of other species. The blue-skinned Centaurians like Hyejin, the four-armed Vorthak like Jin Woo, the metal-bodied Rigelians like Taemin. Hundreds of different peoples, but no humans anywhere. Jin Woo found more clues hidden, deep in the files. References to something called the Silent Years. A time when all human colonies stopped sending messages home. One by one across the galaxy, human voices went quiet. Then he found the word that made everything clear. Plague. Not a natural disease, but something made in a laboratory. Something designed to kill only humans. The files were damaged, but Jin Woo could read enough to understand. Someone had been afraid of humans, afraid of how fast they grew and learned and spread across the stars. Someone murdered them all, Jin Woo whispered. Every human in the galaxy. Hyejin stared at the screen with wide eyes. Who would do such a thing? Jin Woo did not know, but he intended to find out. The coordinates from the original files still glowed on his screen. The Terra system. Maybe there, in the empty space where Earth used to be, they would find answers. The truth was waiting among the stars. Jin Woo stared at the star maps on his screen. The coordinates from the human files pointed to a system far from any trade routes. According to official records, nothing lived there. The star was old and dying, too weak to support planets with life. We have to go there, he told Heejin. The answers are in that system. But traveling to dead space was not easy. They needed a ship, supplies, and most importantly, they needed to avoid council attention. Jin Woo had two friends who might help. Soo Jin was a pilot who flew research missions to distant worlds. Dong Hyun was an engineer who could fix anything that broke. Jin Woo found Soo Jin in the pilot quarters cleaning her ship. She was a small woman with green skin and long tentacles instead of arms. Her tentacles moved like dancing snakes as she worked. You want me to fly where? Soo Jin asked when Jin Woo explained his plan. The Terra system. It will only take a few days. Soo Jin's tentacles stopped moving. That place is cursed. Everyone knows that. Ships that go there never come back the same. Those are just stories, Jin Woo said, but he was not completely sure. Dong Hyun was easier to convince. The big man with red skin and crystal growths on his arms loved mysteries. When Jin Woo showed him the human files, his eyes lit up like stars. Amazing, Dong Hyun whispered, reading about human technology. They built fusion reactors with primitive tools. How did they make it work? 3 days later, their small research ship left Kepler Station. Jin Woo had filed papers saying they were going to study asteroid formations. It was not completely a lie. They were going to study something in space. The journey took 4 days. As they traveled farther from civilization, space became darker and more empty. Fewer ships traveled these routes. The stars looked cold and distant. When they finally reached the Terra system, Jin Woo felt disappointed. One dying orange star, much smaller and dimmer than most. A few small rocky planets close to the star, nothing else visible. Sensors show no life signs, Soo Jin reported from the pilot seat. Just empty space and cosmic dust. But Dong Hyun was studying his instruments with a puzzled expression. Wait, I'm getting strange readings from the asteroid belt. The rocks are too regular, too organized. He pointed to his screen. Dozens of large objects floated in a loose circle around the dying star. From far away, they looked like normal asteroids. But as their ship moved closer, the truth became clear. Those are not rocks, Hyejin breathed. They are ships. The objects were massive beyond imagination. Each one was 50 kilometers long and 20 kilometers wide. Dark metal hulls scarred by millions of years in space. No lights, no power signatures, no signs of life. Just enormous tombs floating in the void. Generation ships, Jinwoo realized. The humans made it this far. Sujin flew their small ship toward the largest vessel. Up close, it looked like a metal mountain floating in space. Ancient symbols covered the hull, strange writing that looked almost familiar but not quite readable. There, Donghyun pointed to a section of the ship that looked different. That might be a docking port. It took 2 hours to connect their ship to the ancient vessel. The docking port was old but still worked. Air pressure equalized with a long hissing sound. Emergency lights flickered on in the corridors beyond. Jinwoo was the first to step inside. The air smelled stale and cold, but it was breathable. Gravity worked, though it felt lighter than normal. The walls were made of simple metal painted white, now faded and stained by time. The lights still work, Hyejin observed, after all these years. They walked down long corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Doors lined both sides, thousands and thousands of them. Jinwoo opened one door and gasped. Inside was a small room with a bed, a desk, and pictures on the walls. Pictures of humans, families smiling, children playing, lovers holding hands. Someone lived here, he whispered. This was their home. They found more rooms. Libraries full of books written in human languages. Workshops with tools and half-finished projects. Gardens where plants had long since died but the growing systems remained. This was not just a ship. It was a city in space, built to carry millions of people across the galaxy. But where were the people? Donghyun found the answer first. Here, he called from a section deep in the ship's heart. You need to see this. The chamber was enormous, stretching up and down farther than their lights could reach. Rows and rows of white pods filled the space, each one the size of a coffin. Millions of them, arranged in perfect lines like a field of metal flowers. Cryogenic chambers, Donghyun explained. For long-term sleep during space travel, Jinwoo approached the nearest pod. Through a small window he could see inside. A human man lay sleeping, his face peaceful and young. Ice crystals covered his skin and hair. Are they alive? Hyejin asked. Donghyun checked the pod systems. Most of the lights were dark, but a few still blinked weakly. Some of them might be. The power has been failing for thousands of years. Most of the pods have shut down. They walked between the rows of sleeping humans. Men, women, children, old people. Entire families sleeping side by side. Each pod had a small plate with a name and a date. The dates were all from 12,000 years ago. At the center of the chamber, they found a computer terminal still glowing with power. Jinwoo connected his translator and began reading the files stored inside. The final message from Earth appeared on the screen, recorded just before the generation ships launched into space. A human woman with sad eyes and gray hair spoke directly to the camera. This is Commander Park Min-jung of the Terra Defense Fleet. Our sun is expanding faster than our scientists predicted. We have maybe 6 months before Earth becomes uninhabitable. Project Exodus is our only hope now. We are sending our entire species to the stars, hoping that somewhere among the worlds, humanity will find a new home and remember where they came from. The message continued with technical details and coordinates for other generation ships. But at the end, the woman's voice broke. If anyone finds these ships in the future, please know that we tried our best. We never wanted to leave Earth, but we had no choice. Tell the universe that humans were here, that we loved and dreamed and hoped for better days. Do not let us be forgotten. Jinwoo felt tears running down his face. Here in the darkness between stars, the children of Earth still slept, waiting for someone to wake them up and remember their names. Jinwoo spent hours reading through the ship's computer files. The sleeping humans around them were just the beginning of the story. The records showed that humans had not just fled Earth in a few ships. They had scattered across the entire galaxy like seeds in a storm. Look at this, he told the others, pointing to a star map on the computer screen. Hundreds of colony ships went in every direction. They found worlds with water and air. They built cities and farms. They had children and grew into whole civilizations. The records were amazing. Humans had settled on desert planets and turned them green. They found frozen worlds and melted the ice to make oceans. On planets with poisonous air, they built cities and cleaned the atmosphere over centuries. They were like gardeners making dead worlds come alive. They were successful, Ye Jin said, reading over his shoulder. So what happened to them? Jin Wu found the answer in files marked with red warning symbols. The records called it the Silent War, but it was not really a war. It was genocide. 12. 1,000 years ago, when humans were spreading across the galaxy, other species became afraid. Humans learned too fast and grew too quickly. They made friends with everyone and shared their knowledge freely. In just a few centuries, they had gone from one dying world to hundreds of thriving colonies. Some species saw this as a threat. Jin Wu read from the files. They formed a secret alliance. They called themselves the Preservation Council. The Preservation Council believed the galaxy belonged to the older species who had been there first. They thought humans were dangerous because they changed everything they touched. While other species took thousands of years to develop new technology, humans did it in decades. They were jealous, Dong Hyun said angrily. Humans were better at surviving than they were. The council created a weapon that had never been used before. A plague designed to target only human DNA. It spread through air, water, and touch. It killed quickly but quietly, so humans did not know they were under attack until it was too late. Jin Wu found records of the plague's release. It started on the biggest human colonies first. Worlds with millions of people went silent in just days. Then it spread to smaller colonies, to ships traveling between stars, to any place humans lived. They killed everyone, Ye Jin whispered. Every single human in the galaxy. But as Jin Wu read deeper into the files, he discovered something even more shocking. The humans had not just built cities and farms on their new worlds. They had done something that changed the entire galaxy forever. Genetic modification, he read aloud. The humans were not just colonists, they were scientists. They took the animals from Earth and changed them, made them smarter, made them able to live on different worlds. The files showed pictures that made Jin Wu's hands shake. Dogs with human-level intelligence walking on two legs and using tools. Cats with opposable thumbs and complex language. Dolphins with lungs instead of gills, living on land planets. Octopi with extended lifespans, building underwater cities. They uplifted Earth's animals, Dong Hyun realized, gave them intelligence and sent them to colonize worlds humans could not live on. But that was not all. The files showed that humans had also mixed their DNA with local species on the worlds they found. On planets with existing life, they created hybrid children who could survive in environments that would kill pure humans. Jin Wu felt his world spinning around him. He looked at his own forearms, his blue skin, his compound eyes. Then he looked at Hae Jin's glowing skin and large eyes adapted for seeing in dim light. At Su Jin's flexible tentacle arms perfect for zero-gravity work. At Dong Hyun's crystal growths that helped him process electronic signals. We are not separate species, Jin Wu said slowly. We are all human descendants. The computer files confirmed it. The Vorthak people came from humans who had mixed their DNA with a local species on a high-gravity world. Over thousands of years, they developed forearms for better climbing and compound eyes for seeing in their world's dim light. The Centaurians came from humans who had colonized a world with very little sunlight. They developed glowing skin to communicate in the darkness and large eyes to gather more light. The Rigelians were the strangest case. They came from humans who had tried to survive on a world with deadly radiation. They replaced their organic bodies with metal and electronics bit by bit until they were more machine than flesh. Every species in the Galactic Council, Jin Wu whispered. We are all children of Earth. The files showed dozens of other species, all tracing back to human colonies. Some had been changed so much over 12,000 years that they looked nothing like their human ancestors. But the genetic markers were still there, hidden in their DNA like signatures in an old book. Su Jin was staring at her tentacle arms with new eyes. My people always wondered why we were so good with technology, why we could pilot ships better than anyone else. It was in our genes, human genes. The Preservation Council had tried to destroy humanity, but they had failed in the worst possible way. Instead of killing humans, they had killed their own ancestors. The very species they thought they were protecting were actually human descendants who had forgotten their own history. The Council knows, Hyojin said suddenly. That is why these files were hidden. That is why they tried to stop our research. They know we are all human, and they do not want us to remember. Jinwoo felt anger burning in his chest. The modern Galactic Council was probably run by the same species who had committed genocide 12,000 years ago. They had erased human history and made everyone forget their true origins. But now the truth was coming out, and Jinwoo knew exactly what he had to do with it. The sleeping humans around them were not just ancient corpses. They were the last witnesses to the greatest crime in galactic history, and some of them might still be alive. Jinwoo could not sleep. For 3 days after returning to Kepler Station, he stared at the evidence they had gathered. Videos of the tomb ships, DNA analysis proving that every species in the galaxy came from human ancestors, records of the Preservation Council's genocide. The truth was too big to keep secret. We have to tell everyone, he said to Hyojin as they sat in his small apartment. The whole galaxy needs to know. But Hyojin looked worried. The Council will try to stop us. They might even kill us to keep this secret. Jinwoo had thought about that too, but some truths were too important to hide. He copied all their files and sent them to news networks across the galaxy. Within hours, the information was spreading faster than the Council could stop it. The reaction was immediate and explosive. On Centauri Prime, Hyojin's people rioted in the streets when they learned they were descendants of Earth's uplifted dolphins. The Vorthak homeworld declared independence from the Galactic Council when genetic tests confirmed their human ancestry. Even the metal Rigelians began questioning their origins. But not everyone was happy with the truth. Some species rejected the evidence completely. They said it was impossible that they came from humans. Others became angry, feeling tricked, and lied to for thousands of years. The Galactic Council called emergency meetings. They denied everything at first, saying the files were fake. But too many scientists were running their own tests. The genetic proof was everywhere, written in the DNA of every species in the galaxy. Jinwoo watched the chaos from his office at the archive. News reports showed protests on dozens of worlds. Some people celebrated their human heritage. Others burned human symbols and demanded the tomb ships be destroyed. Look at this, Hyojin said, showing him a message on her computer. Someone found old human words in our language. Hello, in ancient human sounds like Anyong and Old Centaurian. Similar discoveries were happening everywhere. Human words, hidden in alien languages. Human art styles in ancient cave paintings. Human mathematical concepts in the oldest scientific texts. The evidence was overwhelming. But the most important discovery came from Dong-hyun. He had gone back to the tomb ship with a medical team to study the sleeping humans. Not all of them were dead. A few dozen pods in the deepest parts of the ship still had power. The humans inside might still be alive after 12,000 years. We could wake them up, he told Jinwoo over a secure communication channel. The medical systems are primitive but functional. These people are the last true humans in the galaxy. The decision was not easy. These humans had been sleeping since before the plague. They would wake up to find their entire species extinct and their descendants scattered across the galaxy as different species. The shock might kill them, but they were also the only witnesses to humanity's greatest achievements. They remembered Earth before the sun died. They had lived through Project Exodus. They knew the real history that the Council had tried to erase. Jinwoo made his choice. Wake them up, but do it slowly. Give them time to understand what happened. The first human to wake up was a woman named Min Jung. She had been a doctor on Earth, one of the people who designed the generation ships. When she opened her eyes for the first time in 12,000 years, Jinwoo was there waiting. "Where are we?" she asked in ancient human language. Jinwoo's translator converted her words into modern galactic standard. "You are safe," he told her. But there is much to explain. It took days to tell Min Jung the whole story. how the plague had killed every human colony, how their uplifted animals and hybrid children had evolved into new species, how the galaxy had forgotten Earth and erased human history. Minjung cried when she learned that humans were extinct. But she also smiled when she realized that humanity had survived in a different way. "We scattered our children across the stars," she said, looking at Jinwoo with wonder. "You are all our children, even if you do not remember us." More humans were awakened over the following weeks. Scientists, artists, engineers, teachers. Each one brought knowledge that had been lost for thousands of years. They taught the galaxy about Earth's blue oceans and green forests. They shared human music and stories. They explained technologies that modern science had forgotten, but most importantly, they forgave their descendants for forgetting them. "We never wanted to be remembered as conquerors," said another awakened human named Xiongho. "We wanted to be remembered as gardeners. We planted life throughout the galaxy and let it grow in its own way." The political situation remained chaotic. The Galactic Council collapsed as member species learned the truth about their origins. Some worlds wanted to return to human traditions. Others preferred their current cultures. A few tried to recreate ancient Earth. But slowly, something beautiful began to happen. Species that had been enemies for centuries realized they were all family. Trade increased. Wars stopped. Scientific cooperation reached levels never seen before. Jinwoo found himself appointed as the first director of human heritage, tasked with preserving Earth's history and helping the awakened humans adjust to their new galaxy. It was overwhelming work, but he loved every moment. Standing in his new office, looking out at the stars, Jinwoo thought about humanity's greatest victory. They had not conquered the galaxy through force. They had conquered it through love, sacrifice, and the gift of life itself. The children of Earth had come home at last. Not as strangers, but as family members who had finally remembered their names. In the distance, new ships were launching toward other tomb ships scattered across the galaxy. More humans would wake up. More stories would be told. The galaxy would remember Earth not as a forgotten world, but as the mother of all civilizations. Humanity's greatest story was not ending. It was beginning again.